So he will talk on the establishment of liquid fuel reactor fueled by thorium, the road to enablement of this. So we are looking forward again. Thank you.
Are we there? Can we fill the screen? Can we fill the screens, please? Yeah. May I say, good morning, gentlemen. May I say I'm hugely honored to be following you, sir. You are one of the people I've admired in the world, and it's not just me. So many people are admired in the world. And when I explain why I got into thorium, I hope you will relate to why I got into this. Let me I'll tell you a little bit about the Weinberg Foundation before we get into this. I formed the Weinberg Foundation in early 2011. The significance of that was I'd read about thorium and the amazing benefits of thorium, but then the Chinese made their announcement in January 2011, and they say they're making a commitment to thorium and molten salts and molten fuels in January. Significance is that was pre-Fukushima. Therefore, it was not a knee-jerk reaction. And one of the claims for thorium, it has no military significance. And beyond that, I will come to these, and we can challenge many of these. Thorium not only can produce energy, really cheap, but it can desalinate water, and I would project that one of the biggest problems of the world is going to be water following energy, and thorium can play its part in this. It was arguing, I'm not advocating all of these things, but these drew me into thorium, that you can put these in desert countries. You don't need to put them beside a large sea or river. You can put them in a desert country. You can desalinate the water. You can have irrigation. You can have food. You can have hygiene and all of these things. All from that hooked me. And then what I did post that announcement is that I went to friends and said, "What's wrong?" And nobody said, "What's wrong?" other than there isn't one. And then I carried on. I went to a conference, and I didn't go. I sent somebody to a conference in the States, in Washington, D.C., and the scientists, it was a smaller group than here, but those scientists all saying, enthusiasm, many different opinions, but fundamentally they were saying, go away and tell your leaders, this is real. There was a demonstrator in the 60s and 70s, tell your leaders about it. And I saw an opportunity, and that was the foundation of the Weinberg Foundation. We formed it in 2011 with the aim of learning, promulgating, educating, assessing, and trying to promote to the leaders of the world that there is an alternative to uranium, and all the implications of that. And I hope, sir, that you would acknowledge that that fits with some of the things you have said. So that's a little bit about the Weinberg Foundation. We're a UK-based company, but we operate internationally. And we set out to say, how can we expedite these things? How can we push forward what those scientists were asking us to do? I must say I am not a scientist. I'm not a physicist. I don't deserve to be standing here, but I'm determined to change things in this planet. So the 4 key issues we're going to talk about. There are significant divisions within this community about which way we proceed, and that is clear. I'm not yet arguing anyone. There are huge political hurdles in the global market. I don't think any of us would, even if we'd sat a year ago in Shanghai when we did Jamont Revo, I don't think we then would have perceived that the US would think of itself as a net energy exporter. And I don't think we would ever have believed that. We would never have believed that gas prices, not the regulated ones in Europe, Gazprom ones, but in the US, they would be a quarter of the price of European. And would we have ever believed that the US would withdraw from large nuclear? EDF has withdrawn from the US nuclear. It's closing its big nuclear because they're too expensive. And, gas is cheaper. What I will be arguing is I think the Weinberg Foundation is working on solutions where the cost of thorium-based nuclear will be below the capital cost of the lowest gas and coal in the world, so that we can win this argument commercially, not with massive government subsidy as has been the pattern or whatever. And I'm trying to, yes. We are going to need a lot of international collaboration, but this conference is a massive contribution to that exercise. And what we believe is we need a commercially viable molten salt reactor, thorium-based molten salt reactor design that wins commercially. So it's all about money. It's not about the technology. And I think we have a solution. At the end of my speech, I hope to indicate what I think we're going to be able to see in the world within the next 6 to 12 months. And I'm going to try to give you a little roadmap. Yeah. There are divisions in the next generation community. You're aware of all of these. We don't need to go through many of this. This audience is very, very aware of this. Yeah. But there is a sense that the antipathy towards nuclear is changing, not as quickly as we would wish. There are business people, there are Greens, there are scientists, they're all coming together. And want a revitalized program of nuclear R&D. The theme of my speech is there's not enough R&D going on, and coordinated R&D related, particularly to thorium and molten salts. We are playing a lobbying role. In the UK, we created an all-party parliamentary group for thorium energy. It is a very powerful group. The Japanese are seeking to follow that same pattern within their parliaments. It's quite interesting how the political establishment is moving in these ways. But they want to hear a common story. I mean, I don't like talking about Japan, but you've got competing interests in Japan, so the government don't know which one to support. Yeah, so it's very, very difficult. They've got a bucket of money, but who do they support? Yeah, so we need a compelling case for a next generation, and that it's unarguable as the way forward. And obviously, good examples everywhere. There are paper reactors for thorium. MSRs all over the place. As the Weinberg, we get these applications many a month. Yeah, we've got to get our heads together. Sorry, I've gone the wrong way. This says a lot. All this is basically saying is this is the decline in R&D in fission, and clearly implicitly in that within thorium and molten salts. The great hope is China. China is the first country to have made the total amount and put the amount of money on the table and set it going with an agenda. Very impressive. Chinese, impressive here, but they're very open, and the conference last year in Shanghai was a very, very impressive conference of what China is doing. But they are progressing openly. But if you look at China, you know the pollution issues of China. I enjoyed, as the Weinberg, talking to the head of the Chinese molten salt thing and saying, with each of these coal-fired stations, you're opening every week, one a week, and they have been for years. Could you change the heat source? So switch the coal off and put a thorium MSR in there and just have a switchable heat source. And the Chinese guy looked at me and said, that makes incredibly powerful sense. If we could transform the existing fleet of coal-fired stations to eliminate coal and put MSRs in place of those, And then I think we heard Sorensen yesterday talking about, applying the same to gas. Then the world starts to change quite dramatically because of what we are doing. Because in those circumstances, the infrastructure is already in place. The electric grid is in place, the power stations, the turbines are in place. All we're doing is changing the heat source to get rid of coal, get rid of fossil fuels, and using thorium-based molten salt reactors in place. Anyway, this is a tragic story, but that's the reality. Okay, more and more. We know there isn't an agreement, but there's such goodwill. I mean, I believe so much in Copenhagen that I thought we were going to get something out of it, and the tragedy that we didn't. But it didn't make me give up. Yeah. So carbon taxes are not going forward as they should, and logically I think everybody knows they should. The energy markets are changing everything. I mean, the energy markets in the last 12 months are just unbelievable what has happened. Now we have prices of gas in the US a quarter the price in Europe, where they're predominantly linked to oil prices via Gazprom. And I think everybody knows these issues. I can't believe that an Austrian steel company is moving its production to Texas. An Austrian steel company, because the price of energy in Texas is the quarter of the price of the energy in Europe. I mean, it's just crazy. Fracking is a phenomenon. Yeah, we can't ignore it. It's a reality. But we have to get beyond that. Fracking is not only bad in its own right, it consumes water, unbelievable amounts of water, and water is going to probably be the next huge issue for the world. And remember, thorium MSRs can desalinate water and can give these countries clean water. Anyway, so all this issue. So the nuclear industry has got to decide, will it survive? If you want a personal opinion of mine, having watched what the UK has done in the last month, I'll come to it later, but we've spent $26 billion on 2 large-scale EDF reactors. 26 billion. Yeah? Sorry, people are signaling things to me. Yeah. Sorry. And it is just beyond belief. These are these huge constructions. Now, if you take a molten salt reactor, you don't need that because you're working at atmospheric pressure. You don't need containment vessels because you can't have a meltdown if the fuel is already molten. Yeah? If it's molten, you've got nothing to melt down. Yeah? And safety and everything else plays one significant part. But we've got to decide, the nuclear industry has got to decide whether it's getting out of this. To read that the US nuclear industry now believes its future is in decommissioning, not on building new monstrous power stations. Yes, it's going for small-scale nuclear, modular nuclear, but it's not going for big ones. And so we've got to come up with a solution. I don't think we necessarily need to go through too much of this, but we know we have to work on cooperation here, and this, Jean Revoil and the rest. This is exactly what we're doing, and we will continue that. So I won't jump on that. Yeah, we've got to shorten the timescales, and one of the massive problems, elsewhere things move fast. Fracking, most of us have probably never heard of fracking a couple of years ago, and 4 years ago maximum, but it now has become a dominant feature. The US now believes it be independent of energy, doesn't need the Middle East. Geopolitically, that's fascinating to think about. It becomes a net exporter. All these things are moving faster than we are moving in the nuclear energy. So we've got to find a new way of R&D that gets things out faster. And one of the other things we have to address is licensing. So here we come. Yeah. The reform of licensing is needed. When one has to assume 5 to 10 years to license something, it really is quite unbelievable, and we're doing our best to accelerate that. Here, repeating the 16 billion pounds, $26 billion for 2 nuclear power stations in the UK, and that quietly ignores the subsidies. Every UK electricity buyer is going to have his electricity prices put up 100% for the next 30 years to pay for that. It is beyond belief. That's the cost of current nuclear. And it just cannot continue. There will not be any more nuclear power stations built at that sort of pricing because the massive degree of subsidization needed. So we've got to find a way of coming in at a much, much lower capital cost where it can be justified by normal commercial financial criteria. I think we're moving there. And we are pushing ahead with designs that gets the cost right down, inherent safety, simplicity, waste profile, with designs which don't use pumps, which don't use all the things that add the complexity to modern nuclear. And we've got to work with the licensing companies. We've got to have modular, mass-produced. They can be smaller units, they can be modular, but we need to find that way forward. And it's got to have a business case that doesn't need subsidy. And we are working on some of these. We're supporting people who are setting out to do this. Fair question. Is the fastest way for an MSR, is it to use thorium or maybe uranium? Think outside the box and think which is the way that we can try to achieve what we want to achieve. Okay, so we're talking about licensing regimes, we're trying to get the politicians behind us. The public excitement is there. I have made a personal commitment. I want to commission the first film ever about climate change and energy where people come out of it feeling positive. At the moment, the Al Gore film and all the other films, you come out feeling so totally depressed because people do not believe there is a way forward. We've got to show them there's a way forward. I think somebody's sending me a message here. I'm going to switch off there, but I was going to say one thing, and an optimistic thing. I believe, as a result of activities of the Weinberg Foundation, I think within the next 12 months, we are going to be able to show, maybe to this conference next year, designs that have been already proven, validated, patented, at a capital cost structure that is beneath the lowest price of a gas. That's what we're going to compete with. The lowest price of gas, way beyond coal. So you won't need any coal, you won't need gas, you won't need this, and we will win on commercial grounds, plus all the other benefits. Now, I believe, if I'm invited to speak again next year, I think I would give you a much, much, much more concrete, positive outline. Sorry, have I overrun? Thank you.
So, any questions, comments to... please state your name, because Thank
you. I am Dominique Greneche from France. I am a consultant. Sorry. I have two questions for you. What is the specificity of thorium molten salt reactor for desalination, what is the plus of this kind of reactor compared to other reactor for desalination? Desalination needs only energy and heat, which can be produced by other type of reactors. So what is the specificity?
No, there's nothing unique. There is nothing unique in this.
Okay.
But if you can produce energy so cheaply, then you can afford to desalinate that way. You have to work out what the temperature of the reactor is as well. So I'm not arguing that there's anything unique in it. But I am saying...
I misunderstood. Okay.
I am saying
okay.
It should be so cheap that it becomes economically viable. As we know, if let's say thorium MSRs are providing base load or as required, they can do the rest of the time producing energy, desalinating water, producing hydrogen, whatever. All the good things for the new world. I'm addressing some of my comments in this direction because I would love to think that Hans Blix quite likes some of these messages I'm trying to give. But no, there's nothing unique in that.
Okay. And second question, which is a very quick one. Do you think that you would be able to license a reactor without a containment today? I mean, do you think that the people, the man in the street would accept that? Whatever the safety you're defending for this kind of reactor.
Look, I don't know the answer. We're going to find out. But general people have the concept that every nuclear station has solid fuel rods. And they know solid fuel rods can have meltdowns. If you don't have solid fuel rods, because there's nothing to melt down, you're using molten fuels mixed with molten salts, you're working at atmospheric pressure, you have nothing to contain.
Well, you have still radioactivity efficient products, I mean, are there, whatever they are.
Look, I think we're jumping too far. May I? Yeah, but I've accepted a challenge to bring some of this to you, not today, but further along, but certainly before this time next year.